I read 16 books in quarter one of this year. We have some catching up to do. I used to do monthly reading recaps, what I read in January, what I read in February, and so on. But the problem is I read personally, I read for my book club, and then I also read for my book podcast, Bookish with 2Ks, self-plug. And because of our recording schedule, I'll read things sooner, but I don't want to share that I've read them yet and share my thoughts until that episode comes out. So like the schedule would get off and then I'd be doing like a January reading wrap and I'm like, wait, I can't talk about those two. And then February is going to get backed up. And then, so it just got confusing. And then I got behind and now here we are. I have 16 books to tell you about from the first 3 months of this year. That's on average 5 books a month. Crazy. And 5 DNFs. So let's get the DNFs out of the way first, actually. The ones that I would say don't bother with. We have 3 romances, 1 kind of science fiction, and 1 fantasy. The romances. These are my DNFs. 1-star romance. Should have known it in the name. The thing about this book is it was more literary fiction than romance. I immediately hated the main character's best friend. Their friendship was toxic and weird. I couldn't get behind it. And then I just didn't care. It started to like not go into romance territory. And I was like, what am I reading? Which, like, don't get me wrong. I have literary fiction that I've loved in this stack of books I actually read. But when I'm going in expecting a romance book and you don't give me that, what am I doing here? What I often do when I DNF a book, which I love to do, is I'll go look up like 1 and 2-star reviews. And if they say that they felt the way that I'm currently feeling, then I'm like, yeah, I don't need to continue. Like my gut is not usually wrong when it comes to books. I never regret a DNF. And sometimes I can't put my finger on it. Sometimes I can't really articulate what it is that I'm feeling, but I'll go look up people's reviews and I'm like, that was the reason. Yep, that's what I'm feeling. This is not the book for me. So 1-star romance probably would have been a 1-star romance. And then I started another book called Love on Call, which was a kind of like doctor nurse, perhaps romance. Supposed to be like Grumpy Sunshine, maybe enemies to lovers. The thing is, when you do enemies to lovers in a contemporary romance, there is a fine line between enemies and the guy just being a dick. And I immediately was like, this guy sucks. I don't care if he's hot, he's being rude, irredeemable. I don't really care to find out the progression of this relationship. Immediately no. And my 3rd romance DNF was Holding the Reins by Paisley Hope. I'm a fan of, Lila Sage's cowboy romance series. And so I thought, great, I'll try another one. And immediately I was getting like plantation vibes. It was airing on the side of like rich Southern family and not like rural Western cowboy romance. And I was like, I'm not a fan of these vibes. Not a fan. So those are my 3 romance DNFs. The other 2 DNFs I have, one is called The Kiss of Deception. I read Dance of Thieves like years ago, and I remember liking it, but feeling like I was missing some information. And turns out there's a series that comes before it called The Remnant Chronicles. And I finally got around to wanting to dive into that series so that I could go back and finish this duology. However, I got into this series and it just felt a little too YA to me. I made it 150 pages in, which is typically, I try to give it at least 100 pages before I DNF a book, unless I get like immediate ick. I allow 100 pages for like some plot to happen for me to be interested in it. I got 150 pages in and still nothing had happened. You've lost me. I can't, if I'm already pushing through the first 30% of book 1, you want me to read 3 more books and then go back to this? It's just not going to happen. I'm gonna spark notes this and maybe go back to that. You tell me if it's worth it. But I did DNF it. And my last DNF for the quarter was The Ministry of Time. And I'm really bummed about this because the concept sounded so interesting. I was doing it on audiobook. I was reading it along with a friend who'd finished it just before me. And she was like, I can't wait to hear your thoughts. And I got maybe halfway through and I was like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. Like, does it get better? And she was like, you could skim. So what I did, I really liked the concept of like trying to acclimate a time-traveled person to the real world and the comedy that ensues with that. But I didn't really care about the behind the scenes, like what was happening with the Ministry of Time. And it was kind of confusing. I ended up skipping like the middle 40%. She's like, skip to like 70% so you can hear how crazy the ending is, or like just get a sense for where the story went. But like, it dragged a lot in the middle. So I ended up DNFing, having read maybe 40% total, like the first 30% and the last 10-20%. Yeah, I wasn't into it. A classic case of excellent concept, okay execution. The audiobook narrators were good though. So do with that information what you will. Those are my 5 DNFs for the quarter. Let's get into what I actually read. Let's start with the good. I'm going to start with the romance. I started my year with a reread, which I don't do a lot of. I started by rereading Book Lovers. We did this for our podcast. This is just one of my favorite Emily Henrys. There's something about it, something about Nora that I deeply relate to, that I just really connected with her. The first time I read this a few years ago when it came out, reading it again felt like reading it for the first time, because I kind of forgot some of the things that happened in this story. Like I remember the general feeling and the banter and the characters, but I didn't remember like the plot. So reading it again, I was like, this is fun. It felt like reading it for the first time. Nora and Charlie just have my heart. Nora especially. I love, if you are a lover of books, this book is for you. Like I just love all of the bookish references. It's not cheesy. It's sweet. It's fun. You get sucked in. The sisters relationship in this is like probably the best part. And as someone who has a sister, I loved it. This is a 5-star read for me. Most of Emily Henry is. So I started off the year strong. Then one of my top anticipated reads of the year and one of my favorite romance authors of all time, B.K. Borison, came out with First Time Caller. This is a new book in a series of interconnected standalone romances. This is about Aiden Valentine and Lucy Stone. Aiden works for a radio show as a romance hotline host, and Lucy Stone is a mechanic and a single mom. I had high expectations for this book, and boy, oh boy, did it deliver. Woo! One thing I appreciated especially about this book, when it comes to single parent romances, I sometimes get, I don't know if annoyed is the right word, and also I am not a parent yet, so take this with a grain of salt, but sometimes I get annoyed when like part of the plot is like a lot of stress about the child. Like, oh, what is my kid gonna think about me dating again? Or like, what, like this person has to meet my family. Like I care a lot more about two people's connection. And yes, they have to obviously fit into the family and like the kid is an important part of that. But what I really liked about this is I felt like there was a really good balance of their character development and her daughter's involvement. This story is Sleepless in Seattle inspired. So we actually did this for my book club. A lot of us loved the book and a lot of us hadn't seen the movie. So we ended up watching the movie after, and like the movie, not my favorite. Kind of odd. She took everything good about the concept of Sleepless in Seattle and made it so much better in this book. Sleepless in Seattle, they like don't even meet until the end of the story. This, much better. The chemistry is palpable. The concept of the radio show is perfect. The side characters, the found family, easy 5 stars. Easy 5 stars, as B.K. Borison always is for me. If you read this and loved it, you have to read her Love Light series. There's one for every season. If you want to do it in chronological order, you have to start with Christmas, but I don't think it matters too much. Her writing, her characters just feel so real. Her relationships feel so real. Loved. Okay. Then I had a very pleasant discovery this year of a new favorite artist. Her name is Chelsea Curto, and I have been blowing through her books. I stumbled across her DC Stars hockey series, and in quarter one, I read all 3 of these: Face Off, Power Play, and Slapshot. Face Off was so fun and so refreshing. It's about a woman in the NHL, the National Hockey League. So she plays on a men's team. First one to play on a men's team. You obviously have to like suspend a little bit of disbelief to understand that. There's now a women's professional hockey league and a lot more women in sports, but like this is like a teammates love story. A big emphasis obviously on women in sports. Maverick in this story is just an absolute simp for her. The chemistry, off the charts. And I love, there's no better feeling than starting an interconnected romance series, because like you start to meet all these side characters and you're like, oh, are they going to get a story? I already love them. And they do. So then we go into Power Play. Power Play is about her best friend, Piper. And Piper is a sideline reporter. Again, heavy women in sports here, women in male dominated industries. She falls in love with the grumpy goalie. They have an accidental marriage. And there's nothing like the shy guy standing up for his girl. All I'm going to say about that. Then we get into Slapshot. This is Hudson and Madeline's story. Madeline, we haven't met in the previous 2 books. We do know Hudson. He is like the soft boy of the team. And he ends up hiring a personal chef, Madeline, who is a single mom, and her daughter is deaf. So there is some beautiful deaf representation in this story, but like so sweet. These are also very spicy. But the thing about me and my romance books, it has to be equal parts spice and character development. If it's like heavy smut, no plot, I'm out. I have to be invested in the characters in order to care about their intimacy. And all three of these, so well written. There's a fourth one that just came out when I'm recording this video. So I blew through these first three. I think she's got several more coming, and I will be eating them right up. But I gave each of these around 4 stars. Just excellent. New auto by author. So that's it on romance for the quarter. Let's get into fiction and historical fiction. One of my other first reads of the year was How to Age Disgracefully by Clare Pooley. This is my second book by this author, and I really like her style. I also read The Authenticity Project, and so I was really anticipating this one. The concept like immediately jumped out at me. It's about a old folks home and a daycare that kind of collide and end up having to share the same space, and hilarity ensues. Just little kids say the darndest things. Old people say the darndest things. I found myself laughing and smiling the whole time. The thing with Clare Pooley's style is I end up having no complaints. I just want more. Like her characters could go deeper. We could take everything that's heavy in these stories, whether it's about grief or mental health, and take it like even further. But for what we get, I'm not complaining. Like I have no complaints. I gave it a 4.25. Another heavy theme that it explored that we just scratched the surface of, I felt, and I could have really gone down a rabbit hole on, is the invisibility of aging. Very interesting concept. And how like kind of old people can get away with stuff because people don't think twice about them. Yeah. There's fun little like kind of mystery element to this story. I ate it right up. I highly recommend. And if you want to hear more full-length discussion, we do have a podcast episode about it. Check out Bookish with 2Ks. Did not disappoint. Okay, then one of my favorite historical fiction authors is Kate Quinn. She can do no wrong in my book. So I started working through some of her older stories, and I listened to on audio The Diamond Eye. And this was so interesting. It's about a Russian female sniper. I'm already sad. Her characters and her stories are just so compelling and enthralling. And the audiobook narrator killed it. I ended up giving it a 3.75 because compared to some of my other favorite Kate Quinn, I didn't connect with these characters as much. Other Kate Quinn books have had me sobbing. This one didn't have me sobbing, but I did really enjoy it. I recommend. Also considered historical fiction was The Frozen River. We did this for the podcast. And this was fascinating. It is a fictional story, but the person it's about is real. Her name is Martha Ballard. She was a midwife in the late 1700s, and she never lost a woman in childbirth. These incredible stories of midwifery. There's a mystery aspect to it. I loved hearing like small town gossip. There's a lot you hear when you deal with like all of the births of a town. You learn a lot about family lineage, parentage, the tea. I'd recommend doing this one on audio. If you're a fan of Kristen Hanna, I think you will enjoy this book. I'm actually not a big Kristen Hanna fan. I find her books a drag. This did have some pacing issues for me, but I found it a lot more entertaining. There's also some hints of 18th century feminism. The thing about Martha Ballard is she kept this really detailed journal of every birth she ever attended and death and other stories. And so she talks about the power of a woman being able to read and write in a time where it wasn't a thing. I ended up rating this a 3.5. I remember finishing it and being kind of frustrated, but as I look back, I'm like, I actually kind of enjoyed that. So if you like historical fiction, I think I would recommend. Next, what I think kind of falls into historical fiction is The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store. We also did this for Bookish, and this was educational. Obviously, as a white woman, I am not deeply familiar with the history of the Black and Jewish community. So learning about that was really eye-opening. The book was devastating in a lot of ways. It was so well written, almost felt like required school reading. Like it's primed for an AP Lang essay. Someone needs to write a dissertation on this book, but like, did I enjoy reading it? Not really. The audiobook narrator was amazing. I really liked the storytelling. I really liked the writing. We could have cut a couple characters, and ultimately, like, I wouldn't read it again. But like, should it win awards? Probably. Should it be read in school? Probably. It gets a 3.25 from me. Okay, we have one nonfiction from the quarter. My in-person book club does a quarterly nonfiction, and our nonfiction book, and our nonfiction pick for the month was Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies, and a Silicon Valley Startup. This was crazy. This is the Elizabeth Holmes story. I never watched the show. I didn't really follow the whole Theranos thing, but as someone who lives in the Bay Area, aka near Silicon Valley, it was actually wild listening to this. They're like naming streets in San Jose, and I'm like, I know where that is. They're talking about other offices, and I'm like, I could go there. I think this was so well written. It's hard for me to rate nonfiction because it's often like, did I like it? I don't know, but it was educational, but like, man, I learned something, or like, wow, what a crazy story. But I'm not gonna like rank it with my fun romances and fantasies, you know? I did do it on audiobook. I thought the audiobook was great. If I had to give it a rating, I would give it a 3. It lost me a little bit in the scientific stuff. We got really in the weeds about some of the testing and the science and the whatnot, which like, if you're into that, I think you'll eat this right up. But for me, I was like, anyway, maybe recommend. Okay, I also had one thriller in quarter one, and that was Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. This is my second book by Lisa Jewell. I read None of This Is True, and I listened to it on audiobook, and I really liked it. So I was excited to read another one, but I did not like this book. The thing about it is it's just a bummer to read. Like, no spoilers, but you kind of find out who the villain is pretty early on, and then you just hear about what happens, and you're like, ugh, that sucks. Like, it was just depressing and gruesome and disturbing. It kind of had like a happy ending. There was like some closure, but I would have DNF'd this if it wasn't for doing it for the podcast, because I did not have a fun time listening to this. It hurt to read. And the plot, like, disturbing stuff aside, there wasn't a lot of suspense throughout. And as Kendra and I were talking it through on the podcast, we thought of like 7 other ideas that we would have enjoyed better than the plot twist we get in this story. I got a 2. Pass on this one. Okay, now let's get into my fantasy reads. Let's start with the big release of the quarter, Onyx Storm, book 3 of the Fourth Wing series. Sorry, what's it actually called? It's not the Fourth Wing series. Why do I forget? What are you called? Am I so dumb? It has a series name, does it not? I can honestly look this up, but I'm convinced that it says it in the book. Okay, well, I'm looking it up. Empyrean series, that's what it's called. I think it's kind of a red flag that I couldn't remember that. Okay, so this was obviously a highly anticipated read, and this was a make or break book for me. I loved Fourth Wing, the first book. Iron Flame was a letdown, so this needed to bring it, or else it's only been downhill since book 1. And I will have to say, it didn't quite bring it. This is the lowest I've rated a book in this series so far. It didn't put me off the series as a whole, but I have lowered my expectations. The thing about this book is I don't think that we learned anything else that we didn't already know after Iron Flame. Like, sure, there's stuff that happens, but like, there's not really any character development. There wasn't a lot of like forward moving plot. It felt very episodic. Her writing in general, it feels like every chapter it's like, oh, new thing to do, we did it, cliffhanger, next chapter, new thing to do, resolution, and it's back down, like TV episodes. It didn't have a whole complete arc as a book as a whole, and I was itching for some side character development, and we just didn't get it. Now, I didn't do a reread before diving into this because I reread Fourth Wing before Iron Flame, and I just felt like they were decently fresh in my brain. I watched a few TikTok recaps, but the first like 70 pages of this, I was like, where are we? Who is this? Why don't I remember anything? And I don't think that that's my fault. I saw a lot of people, even people who had freshly done a reread, being confused in the first 70 pages of this story. And on a book 3, we shouldn't be lost. We started introducing more politics of the world, more gods, more magic stuff, and it was all too much at once. We left finishing this book with more questions than answers. And as a third book in the story, you should be answering a lot of my questions, in my opinion. Overall, I gave it a 3, which might be generous, and is the lowest I've definitely given in this Empyrean series. I will be reading because they're entertaining enough, and I'm already this far, but like, if you haven't started the Fourth Wing series and you're not obsessed with book 1, like, quit while you're ahead. That's all I gotta say. Okay, on to better things. Arguably going down is probably one of my top reads this year, definitely one of my top reads of the quarter, and that is the highly anticipated new Hunger Games prequel, Sunrise on the Reaping. Oh my God. I've always loved Haymitch. If you've never read the Hunger Games series, literally you're missing out so hard. Go read that and then read the prequels and then get yourself to this. Knowing what we know about Haymitch, I didn't think that this book was going to break my heart the way it did. Like, we know somewhat the context of how his story goes because we know him from the original Hunger Games series. So I'm going into this going like, yeah, I'm probably going to be sad, but like, I'm excited to learn more about Haymitch and like see what happens. And then Suzanne ripped my heart out and stomped on it and then ran it over with a car. This is me, I was crying not even 30 pages into this book. This is me at the end of this book. This is me also at the end of this book. Different occasions. I spent probably the last 100 pages of this book, eyes blurred with tears, uncontrollably sobbing. Easily my new favorite Hunger Games book. I'd give it 6 stars if I could. If you don't like this book, I don't trust you. Plain and simple. The lore, the Hunger Games lore that she drops in this is equally devastating and enticing. Like, we learn things about Katniss's parents. We learn, stuff about Effie and who comes before Effie and things about the Capitol. And the undertone, entire theme of this story is propaganda. Could not be more fitting for the time we live in. Oh, the political subtext is crazy. Suzanne is a wizard with words. This movie is going to destroy me. And the casting that's already come out for this movie, I know I'm recording this way after quarter one is done. So like me, when I finished this book, didn't know this information, but the casting that's already come out for the Sunrise on the Reaping movie, it's going to be insane. So do yourself a favor, read The Hunger Games, watch the movies, read Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, watch that movie, then read this book and prepare yourself for the next movie. You don't want to miss out on this. Okay, and then to some of my favorite fantasy I've read in a long time, I continued with the Bridge Kingdom series. This is books 3 and 4 that I read in quarter one. Books 1 and 2 follows Aaron and Laura, and this follows a new couple, same world. We've met these characters, but now they got their own show. Danielle Jensen deserves so much more hype. You may recognize that name from, she's got a series out called A Fate Inked in Blood, but the Bridge Kingdom series and these 2 books, Inadequate Heir and Endless War, first of all, look how pretty they are. Flawless. The world building is incredible. The writing is beautiful. The character development, if you like political scheming, think Game of Thrones level backstabbing twists and turns, oh, you're gonna eat this up. You're gonna eat this up. And Zara and Karis, forbidden romance, like for real. It's not just like I guess we're kind of enemies to lovers. No, this is like their nations are at war. Same thing with Bridge Kingdom, like the first 2 books. I flew through these. In fact, this book actually takes place in tandem with book 2. So it adds a lot more context, which is super interesting. High stakes, twists and turns. This series is slept on, and I'm going to be yelling at everybody to read it. Go read it. Thank you. So that is it for quarter one. A lot of great, a little bad, most good. Again, if you want full-length discussions with me and my friend Kendra, check out our podcast, Bookish with 2Ks. You can follow me on Goodreads. You can follow me on Fable. And I also put small reviews on my Instagram stories. So check all those places out, and I'll catch you next quarter.